being an entrepreneur is sometimes stressful, and you need to make sure that you don't overdo it or burn out.
Has there been any, I guess, mistakes or failures, if you would say, that have come up along the way, struggles or setbacks that really made you sort of question things?
The biggest one that comes to mind besides coronavirus is not defining my offering well enough, so that there's a mismatch between the expectation of the client and your expectation as a provider. So when individuals come through word of mouth referral, I had this assumption that they had a direct conversation with somebody about their experience of working with me. They're at the dinner table, oh, we just got back from a great trip. That's what we did. And what I learned was that some of the referrals were super casual, that somebody was just at like an art opening and somebody said like, oh, I'm going to Japan. And they're like, oh, I was just in Japan. I'll give you the person I talked to. But they didn't have a longer conversation than that. So they didn't know to what extent my offering was. And I didn't do a good job of explaining that up front. So then you get into this kind of back and forth where you'll never make that person happy, because what they're expecting and what you're expecting are not the same. Mm-hmm. And so being really upfront and clear and defining, like, this is what I do, will just be a better experience for everybody. It's a much kinder way to approach the interaction. Mm-hmm. And so I needed to do a better job of putting that language out into the world ahead of time. And that was a great learning and defining what you don't do so that you could, setting boundaries in any business is important. You can't be everything to everyone. And at first you want to be, first, but then you realize that you do some things better than others, and that's probably only learned through trial and error, or best learned through trial and error, so that you can, assess the situation ahead of time. But that definitely caused me some trouble, because I just felt like, I don't want to disappoint anybody. I don't want anybody to have a bad trip. I want everybody to come and, get to experience Japan in its best light, regardless of where they're going or what their interests are. And yeah, maybe I failed a couple of the guests that I had coming over. And so that was definitely one of the biggest mistakes that I had made. And now I'm super curious, how to weather a retraction in the number of individuals coming to Japan. Because I've been here during the boom of like nonstop growth in arrivals numbers. So what does it look like, when there's less people coming? And so that's something that I'll navigate moving forward.
Yeah. Where are you based in Japan?
I live in Tokyo.
Okay.
Tokyo, Japan.
Alrighty.
Yeah.
And is travel a regular part of your routine, or are you more in the office now?
No, I still travel so much. I've been to 42 of the 47 prefectures, so I still have a few to get to. But I think that my continued travels throughout Japan just make me more and more excited about this country. Like, you just fall in love with every new place that you go, and you're like, that is such a positive reinforcement for the job that you do, that, there's endless discoveries to be had. And especially the longer that you stay, the layers, you get to start peeling back the layers. And so the nuances that you experience, even if you visit a destination more than once, begin to change, and the stories that you can share. So, I love traveling. I don't know, I've only been here for 4.5 years, but the more people you talk to, they get to this point where they're like, I had to get out of Japan, and they just like, something happens and it's like, they had to go. And my husband has been like, let's definitely try and like spend time outside of the country, so that when you're in Japan, you're happy to be in Japan, but you don't feel trapped. Right. Or you don't feel like that's the only option.
Is your husband Japanese?
He is Japanese,
okay.
But he has spent a lot of time outside of Japan. Okay. So he's only been back in the country for about 3 years, since his latest exploration. So I think for him as well, the time spent outside of the country is also very valuable. But I have a domestic-based business. So so that's also an evolution that has to happen.
On a scale of 1 to 10, how much of a risk taker are you?
I'm like a 5. I'm pretty low.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I think thus far that's the lowest answer.
Yeah.
That's good though. That's good. So you had mentioned your husband briefly, and I was wondering about your entrepreneurial support team. I assume he's one of the people on there.
He's so helpful. Yeah, he definitely pitches in when necessary, but I have an amazing lawyer, an amazing accountant, and these individuals that I work with in the different areas, I think of them as colleagues. They all might run their own businesses, but we work together. So they're incredible. And then I don't have full-time staff that work with me, but I have folks that come in, like, an executive assistant that comes in once a week or different periods of time. You work more closely with folks. And then other people who run travel agencies in Japan and outside of Japan, because the market has been so busy, we are often referring people to one another. So it's like, I can't help you, but I know this person, and I hope, if they're not too busy, they might be able to help you. So there's a lot of goodwill and reciprocity that goes on there too. I would also include I don't know if you read Murakami's, like, what I talk about when I talk about running, but for an entrepreneur, things outside of your day-to-day business, whether it be your friends or, I'm so fascinated by sake and sake production. And so I get to learn from my friends here that are into that, or acupuncture. My acupuncturist is amazing. She's so helpful. And all of them are part of your team to ensure the quality of experience and the quality of, like, being an entrepreneur is sometimes stressful, and you need to make sure that you don't overdo it or burn out so that you can continue to do your job. So yeah, the team is big team.
That's good. And are you a part of any organizations or sometimes like mentorships, or do you have any way of meeting up with other entrepreneurs? Because like you said, it can get stressful. And I think it can also get lonely at times because not everyone really understands what it's like to own and run your own business. You don't get to complain about the boss.
I am the boss. I'm complaining about myself. No, I don't have any formalized groups, but when I moved to Japan, I met a lot of folks that were also small business owners, whether it be small business owners or like artists. So, they run their own art practices, and it's so similar.
Yeah.
So I feel like talking to them is really helpful. And then just via friendship, getting to talk to other folks that share that experience.
And what do you think is next for the tourism industry in Japan?
I think that most people have gotten on board with experiential tourism. That's something that, maybe 8 or 9 years ago sounded a little like, what's that? And now you get emails from ANA who's, created their own Odyssey travel, and they're, trying to get people out and around. And I think internationally, people are going to start to create their own definitions of what creates a meaningful site. So if you think about, people being cultured many, like hundreds of years ago, there was the grand tour of Europe, and you had to go and see these different sites in order to be considered cultured. And I think that idea has evolved a little bit, but we still have that. It's like, well, if you go here, you have to see this, because that's just part of our canon, like what we believe to be important. And I think that, as we start to tailor and hyper-personalize, everyone's definition of what's important is going to be a little different. So you might not have a collectively agreed upon idea as to, what are the sites that you need to see, which is totally okay. That's a great evolution.
Okay. Is there something you feel the Japanpreneur community should know about that maybe I didn't cover?
There's a lot going on, with international banking, like Revolut. I don't know if you've used that came out of the UK. But I think that there's some solutions that would allow an international entrepreneur, to save money, maybe, as you are working, if you're working like I am across currencies.
Okay.
This is what this person has when they come over, but maybe they're paying with their credit card or whatever it may be. But to just stay up with the technology and see, like what your options are. It's hard to optimize when you're busy, like that's the last thing you want to think about. But those little things add up. So something to keep in mind. And having a good accountant can also, they can keep you abreast of that. Staying on top of your taxes and staying on top of the changes in tax rules. Because you need to know what's going on in Japan, but if you're an entrepreneur from the States, you also need to know what's going on in America. So while your focus might be Japan, you cannot disconnect completely from the rest of the world.
Right.
And that one of your jobs is to be that bridge. So to go back and forth between the worlds is very important because you have an opportunity that not as many people have.
Right. Okay. Wow. Well, you seem like I want everyone to sort of learn and study from you because you seem like a very well-rounded person. We didn't even really get into it, but like the stresses of being an owner. And we didn't even touch on the topic of being a female owner in Japan who's not Japanese. I'm sure there's, there's a few stories there probably, but it's good to see that you are balancing or at times juggling well. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah. A well-placed business card and confidence goes a long way. You don't have to walk into a room and fall into the trap of how somebody might expect you to act. And that I think throws everybody off and then okay.
Yeah.
So, yeah. But thank you. Yeah. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening.